Everybody but me has an AIPAC person.
What's that mean, an AIPAC person?
It's like your babysitter, your AIPAC babysitter, who is always talking to you for AIPAC.
Every member has something like this?
I don't know how it works on the Democrat side, but that's how it works on the Republican side. They've got your cell number. They come to D.C., you go have lunch with them.
That's absolutely crazy. Why have I never heard this before?
Why would they want to tell their constituents that they've basically got a buddy system with somebody who's representing a foreign country?
Have you seen any other country do anything like this?
It's the only country that does this. They pay for trips for congressmen and their spouses to go to Israel.
What's the trip like?
You go see the wall.
Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Rescue Michigan Sunday night live stream. And this week, President Trump has all but announced he's turning his back on all of his campaign promises. Instead of America first, Trump will be putting America third after the Ukrainian dictator, Volodymyr Zelensky, and of course, his first priority, which is Israel. There will be no peace, and in fact, Trump will be starting a new war in the Middle East. Instead of deporting criminal aliens, drug gangs, rapists, and terrorists, Trump will be targeting college students for expressing political opinions. Instead of dramatically cutting waste, fraud, and abuse in government, he will be increasing the budget deficit enormously, and he'll attack those who oppose it. And rather than a new American golden age, Trump will be instead pursuing the exact same policies that Joe Biden administration did. Only with Trump in the Oval Office, now Republicans will be the ones defending all of these lousy policies that the American public can put Democrats back into power in 2026. And the cycle can just repeat until America's bankrupt or wiped out in a global nuclear war. So joining me tonight, we have Shane Trejo, who has zero capacity for bullshit. And so we're going to get into it tonight. This has been, as I say, absolutely devastating. And coming off of what had been a triumphant, not officially State of the Union address, this is just awful to see. And I think a lot of these things are going to be hard to unravel, hard to undo, just absolutely devastating. Starting with, I guess we might as well start with the one thing that we've been warning, and a lot of people have been warning, would be Trump's number one problem, which is not getting sucked into Ukraine, which it looked like he was going to extricate himself from that. He had every way to do it. He could have just let Europe own the whole thing. Zelensky didn't want peace, and he just now completely blown it. So I guess we'll start there. How you doing, Shane? I'm in a mood, you can tell.
Well, yeah, I mean, wish I could disagree with your grim assessment of things. A lot of the initial promise of the Trump administration, all that momentum has, dissipated. A lot of things are going in the wrong direction, a lot of catastrophic moves. I mean, I don't think it's too late to turn things around. I think, there might be hopefully at some point like a house cleaning of some of the more neocon people who've once again wormed their way in the administration once these policies start going seriously awry. So I don't think it's completely destitute in terms of, being able to change this stuff, but certainly a lot of really bad unenforced errors, reminiscent of some of the worst things that we saw, the most frustrating things that we saw in the first Trump administration.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start with just what's happened in this past week. So look where things had been just a week ago was that Trump he'd been withholding support for Ukraine. He had said we need to get Ukraine to a peace deal. And first Zelensky comes to the White House, acts like a complete douchebag. Trump humiliates him. It was hilarious. It was all very good. And then they have this meeting in Jeddah where Trump's administration people meet with the Ukrainians. They met for 8.5 hours. So, it was a very acrimonious meeting. The Ukrainians get dragged kicking and screaming to this proposal for a ceasefire on the conditions that they have to talk to the Russians. And there's going to have to be talk about territorial concessions and all this other stuff. As soon as the meeting is over, before they get back into Washington, Trump has already reauthorized all of the military aid, all of the intelligence, all of the American tax money now going into the war to kill Russians. And then instantaneously, what do the Ukrainians do? They start walking it all back. Oh, no, we're not going to meet with the Russians, not only on our terms. And now Trump owns Ukraine. We are now once again sending weapons and intelligence support to Ukraine. And what's Trump going to do now? Take the military aid back again? because that looks just like he's like waffling. Hey, Peter, we do see you on X, buddy. Thanks for tuning in on X. We are also streaming on X and also folks on Twitter and on YouTube and Facebook. Jay says the honeymoon is over. It didn't have to be. We'll go through it all tonight. Mark says, it's okay, Adam. You are no longer a Trump supporter. I support all the things Trump campaigned on. Problem is he's just reversed everything, and we're going to go through it from Ukraine to Israel to spending. It's been a mess. Anyway, we'll go through this all. Hey, Heather, good to see you. This will be a light stream as far as talking about Michigan stuff goes, although we do have to talk about Mike Rogers, but we will get there. So anyway, this ceasefire deal, which Trump is doing exactly the same thing that Biden was doing as far as trying to have these negotiations with everybody except Russia. And then they're going to show up to Russia with like this ultimatum. Like they've negotiated this out with Ukrainians, and Biden would also talk to the Europeans. And then they go to Russia like, here's what our peace ultimatum deal is. And they're like, no. So Putin was polite about it. He's like, yeah, okay. We can, because he doesn't want to throw this all away. He doesn't want to just say, you're crazy and an idiot if you think we're going to accept a ceasefire when we're winning the war right now. But so he said, he's like, we just have to negotiate some details. Like, how are you going to enforce a ceasefire on a 2,000-mile long line of contact? Who's going to enforce this? Also, what's the point of any of this? He's just like throwing these legal questions back at Trump to like say, like, have you guys done any diplomacy at all? Have you thought this out at all? Like, why would we agree to? Because they know, like we've talked about this on the stream, this is exactly the trap that was set for Trump. Remember, we just talked about this. This is the plan that the Europeans have for Trump to get him sucked into Ukraine. And now he's doing exactly this thing. So, at the end of the day, this whole dance and all the jiggery pokery about the ceasefire deal is bullshit because there's two warring parties, Russia and Ukraine, and they are not going to come to a settlement over the question of, among other things, the 4 territories. Russia's position is those are our lands now. Their position is we cannot allow Nazis to run the government in Ukraine, which is a position the Ukrainians aren't going to concede on, because they're run by Nazis. So one side's going to win and one side's going to lose. And all Trump could do is get us out of there and let the Europeans take the blame. And instead, now he's the one funding it. And how is he going to walk that back? Yeah, Sharon, thank you. Sharon says Trump isn't always right. When he is right, he needs to be called out. It doesn't mean we hate him. Right. And that's the thing. We don't want him to fail. We want him to succeed. We don't want the Democrats to be back in power in 2 years. And if this stuff isn't called out, he isn't going to learn. But this is the way. And we'll get more into what Thomas Massey knows about this in a minute here. But just to talk a little bit more though about like what's happening in the war. As all of this is going on, Russia just carries out like the most badass military operation ever. They have 800 guys trudge 16 miles, or maybe it's kilometers, 16 kilometers through a gas pipeline, which they've just cleared the lethal toxic gas out of, where they go into Suja, which is like this territory in Kursk, the only real anything remotely resembling a city in this part of Russia that Ukrainians had occupied. And they just completely annihilate the Ukrainian troops there. They now have the rest of them surrounded. And Trump, as this is happening, Trump puts this post up on Truth Social. Let me find it. Where he basically is begging Putin to show these guys mercy, these Ukrainians. And, I mean, keep in mind, the Russians have been like documenting these guys carrying out terrible atrocities against the civilians in Kursk. Horrible war crimes. And so this is what Trump wrote. Hold on, I've got it here, I think. Boy, there's this post. There's this other post of his whining about the fake news, talking about Steve Witkoff. He's getting so into all of all of these things. Sorry, guys. I'm sorry for the dead air. Oh, here's the quote. He says, we had a very good and productive discussion with Vladimir Putin of Russia yesterday, and there's a very good chance that this horrible, bloody war can finally come to an end. But at this very moment, thousands of Ukrainian troops are completely surrounded by the Russian military and in a very bad and vulnerable position. I've strongly requested to President Putin that their lives be spared. It would be a horrible massacre, one not seen since World War II. God bless them all. He actually adds that. God bless the Ukrainian soldiers on Russian territory, including the ones that have committed war crimes, including the Azov Nazis. Those are the people that Trump says God bless to. So Putin is, being very polite about things. He says, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give them till Monday to surrender, but their commander has to order them to surrender. Because the thing what Zelensky's going to do, Zelensky says, this is all not true. The Ukrainians are winning the war. There's no surrender. Da, 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 da. So Trump just threw the ball back into Zelensky's court there. And Donna says Trump himself said the other day he'd never had a plan to end the war on day one, as he promised over and over again. He said he was being sarcastic. Amazing. So, Russia's trying to be patient, like, okay, we know we want to have, some kind of settlement here. So we'd like to work with you guys, but your demands are not very reality based. Yeah, Peter says Trump cannot put political support behind Russia. That was why his easy way out was just to say, okay, we can't deal with the Ukrainians. They say they're winning the war now. The Europeans say they're going to help them. Okay, have fun, guys. Sorry, we tried. Ukraine didn't want to negotiate. That was all he had to do, was get out. But now he's going to have a real hard time getting out.
So why do you think there's any reason why he did the change? Was he just outfoxed? Is he, was there some sort of behind the scenes arm twisting? Is he being, misled by some of his more neocon advisors, like national security liaison or whatever his name is, Michael Waltz or Rubio or someone like that? What do you think is the reason of this sudden shift by Trump?
Yeah, I think he's getting bad advice from a lot of bad people, particularly Mike Waltz. I think the intelligence agencies have been feeding him these like gibberish statistics on casualties. There's been this constant myth for the past 3 years. Any day now, Russia's economy is going to collapse. Any day, the military is going to fold like a cheap suit. They've been saying this for the past 3 years now. Peter says probably Kellogg. Well, Kellogg has actually been sidelined now, which is nice. But I mean, the guy who Trump really should be listening to is Colonel Daniel Davis. And the reason I bring Daniel Davis up is because, and if you guys don't know, you should watch his YouTube channel. He has excellent analysis on the Ukraine situation. I listen to his show like at least once a week. He was just vetoed by Congress. He was picked by Tulsi Gabbard to be the deputy director of national intelligence. And guess what? They just pulled his nomination because apparently some people in Congress say he is not sufficiently pro-Israel. So once again, the Israel lobby apparently has a veto over Trump's own staff so that we can only have neocon warmongering morons on the Trump team. Yeah, and Jamie Ortiz mentions another one. Colonel Doug McGregor was just on Tucker's show the other day. Another brilliant guy Trump should be listening to. And Trump knows who he is. He shouldn't need to be told to call Daniel Davis. So,
from what I saw, Daniel Davis said some things about Israel's actions in Gaza, that were not in favor of them, which is we're the United States of America, So if you have a contrary belief to another country and what they're doing in terms of foreign policy, why should that be an automatic disqualifier? Unless, of course, that's the country that's really calling the shots.
Yeah. And what upsets me, you can tell I'm very angry tonight, is Trump should have let it ride. She said, I want to see the confirmation hearings. I want to hear the questions. I want to hear the answers. I want to see how they vote. Make them vote on it. But no, they just withdraw the nomination, and that's all there is to it.
And this sort of thing, this sort of policing is going to make people, great hires like Tulsi Gabbard be completely neutralized. She'll be surrounded by neocons. She'll be surrounded by establishment, status quo hacks, and she won't be able to do anything good in her position to reform anything in Washington, D.C. Same goes for Kash Patel and Bobby Kennedy Jr., whoever else, all these people are going to be neutralized because they're not going to be able to get their own people in there because there's a litmus test of the establishment and the good people won't pass it. They'll have said some sort of statement that is contrary to the regime's opinion that everyone in Washington, D.C. must have on all these different issues, and they'll be sidelined and silenced. That's what we're seeing.
Yeah. Yeah. There's Jewish Insider boasting that they're reporting on his allegedly anti-Israel views. I mean, he doesn't like that genocide they're committing, has led to growing criticism of this election. Well, make them vote on it is what he should have done. They also vetoed his pick for CDC, Dave Weldon, former member of Congress, and they accused him of being anti-vax. Peter,
well, shouldn't we have people's voices in there who are, not necessarily pro-vaccination? I mean, virtually everybody employed in the government is super gung-ho for vax, wants mandatory vax. Why don't we have a dissenter, at least one dissenter in there who can express an alternative viewpoint? That's not allowed in Washington, D.C. All dissent is crushed and, at the behest of the multinational corporations that, depend on these regulations being written at their behest.
Yeah. Yeah. Peter asks, Trump could have a different plan for him, bring him in as an advisor with no confirmation needed. Yes, they could do that. Hopefully he does. Fire Mike Waltz. You don't need confirmations for the national security advisor. Could do that. But that hasn't happened, unfortunately. So yeah, again, there's been these vetoings of basically all the smart people when it comes to foreign policy. And so yeah, one thing is this complete disaster in Ukraine, which is just that Russia's going to fight to the military conclusion. Donna says Russia invaded Ukraine. He is the aggressor. If someone broke into your home, should we support the criminal? Not you would surrender? Question. Okay, well, here's the thing, Donna. First off, there's a principle in self-defense called imminent personal harm. You don't need to wait until you are shot before you disable somebody who is pointing a gun at you and threatening you, which is what we were actually doing in Ukraine by flooding Ukraine with arms and weapons and beefing up their military and preparing for an assault on Crimea. So yeah, there's a doctrine called preemption. You don't have
doing the coup in 2014 to overthrow the more neutral government, put in a pro-Western pawn. Biden administration put Victoria Nuland in a very high position in the State Department. Victoria Nuland was the lady who helped orchestrate that coup of the Ukrainian government, putting in a pro-U.S., pro-NATO, pro-Western pawn. And, President Trump, we're probably not going to be too laudatory of him today, but when he was in office, the last thing on his agenda was something like spreading NATO into Ukraine. That's something that's just not on his radar. He wants NATO to, pony up some more money. He doesn't necessarily want to expand them. So that wasn't something that was on the radar of his State Department. But then Biden gets in there, Victoria Nuland's put back into a place of power, and suddenly the idea is to put Ukraine in NATO and then have, weapons, NATO weapons pointed right at Russia, right on their border. With no buffer zone. And, if a country was trying to put, weapons on Mexico on the other side of the Mexican border,
China was arming
the United States.
Yeah, China was arming Mexico and literally training anti-American terrorist gangs in Mexico. You think we'd wait for Mexico to invade? But actually, the funny thing is, our priorities have changed all of a sudden. We're not worried about the Mexican border. In fact, our own border czar is now worried about something else altogether. So here's Tom Homan, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, hold on. Let me.
Directly contrary to the United States.
Hold on.
That's the Secretary of State. That's a charge on the.
Why is this not playing? Oh, here we go. Let me try this again.
It's directly contrary to the United States foreign policy. That's the Secretary of State. That's a charge on the Secretary of State. We consider a national security threat. When you're on campus, and they say, and I hear freedom of speech, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. Can you stay in a movie theater and yell fire? Can you slander somebody's burglar? Free speech has limitations, but when you go to a college campus, you incite protesting and locking down and taking over buildings and damaging property and handing out leaflets for Hamas, who is a terrorist organization. Coming to this country either on a visa or becoming a resident alien is a great privilege.
You know, I thought this guy was going to do something about the drug gangs and the terrorists and all these other things plaguing our country, but no, he's targeting campus protesters. That's what we're doing now, apparently.
And if you look at the deportation rates, what the Trump administration is doing right now is well under what the Obama administration did while Obama was in office. He was far from a closed border immigration patriot. So the deportations are relatively low as in comparison to what we were promised of the actual illegals. And now you have ICE being the free speech police, going after people who support Palestine on campus. As a result, and what country is that at the behest of? Of course, Israel.
Yeah, they're not targeting campus, but they're targeting the First Amendment. Yeah, that's the thing too. Is the First Amendment is meaningless if you don't defend speech you disagree with. So, all this cancel culture stuff has been shown to be nonsense because all they do is attack people that criticize Israel. And this is all about free speech. Like, there's no question. Like, it would be like if, like the good example. And this is, by the way, this is Tom Homan spelling it right out. Like if they wanted to say, "Oh, this is terrorism," blah blah blah, like they can't even say that excuse because he specifically said this is not free speech, which yes, it is. Criticizing a country and criticizing a foreign policy is the definition of free speech. That is exactly what free speech is. It's taking a controversial position on a policy question. That's precisely what free speech is.
And another thing is, if someone is, occupying a building or committing a property crime, they should be charged with a property crime under, the law in a given state. Now you have kind of a police state apparatus that is going and surveilling people and punishing them for having dissident beliefs. This is exactly what was going on in college campuses against MAGA people, against conservatives for many years, and was called cancel culture then. But now the conservatives, the right-wing people, the Trump administration wants to enact cancel culture against people who don't support the state of Israel on campus. So we saw this. I think it was Ron DeSantis who signed the bill criminalizing protests against Israel, and he went to Israel and signed it. So this has been building for a long time, this idea, and it's very harmful to freedom of speech. If there's a protester who gets violent on campus, arrest them, and if they're not here legally, then sure, deport them. But what's going on is obviously a step beyond that, and it's attack on free speech of people who do not support the state of Israel.
Yeah. So Peter says, when you take buildings to prevent students from using, that is more than just a protest. Tom Homan just made absolutely clear speech is what they are targeting. That is what he said. He didn't say when you occupy a building. He said when you hand out leaflets. It is absolutely as they have. And here's the crazy thing. What's the Trump administration's number one enemy right now should be these rogue federal judges who have been nullifying his order, who have been usurping his constitutional authority. And guess what all this garbage does? It makes it harder for Trump to win cases against them because it's giving all these Supreme Court judges, and really any judge looking at the case, reasons to worry about the Trump administration actually being bad on civil liberties, because they are being bad on civil liberties on this one. And it's damaging important good cases that the Justice Department should be pursuing, defending their Article 2 powers.
And they're wasting their political capital on stuff like this when they should be, going after the corrupt judges. There's so many different aspects of the government that they should be going after 110%. Those are kind of falling by the wayside while, let's go after, unpopular speech on campus instead. Because, people who hold the purse strings and who are bankrolling the party want that to happen. And, the other stances might be a little bit more controversial. The donor class might not like it. So let's go after the dissident protesters on campus. And it's really bad. And it's like you said, it's going to damage the Trump administration's credibility and make it harder for them to fight in the courts against in the ways that they are being hamstringed in a way that they shouldn't by the courts. So it's bad on multiple levels.
Yeah, so much for the Arabs for Trump stuff. Yeah, Peter says I couldn't hear Tom. The audio is very muddy and low. Yeah, Tom is a bit. Tom Homan's a bit of a mumbler. Unfortunately, this is kind of the way he talks. The audio could have been louder too. I know. Jamie says I think Texas required. Multiple states have these laws. They're totally unconstitutional, but they're on the books because they pass them. But yeah, so that's what we're apparently doing instead of actually fighting. The people terrorizing Americans in their homes. As we're going after protesters on campus. That's the priority. And these are all, in case people haven't been keeping track, what was Joe Biden doing in his administration? He was doing the same exact thing that Trump has been doing all week, giving weapons and money to Ukraine for their noble war with Russia, for cracking down on criticism of Israel, doing what Netanyahu wants. It's the exact same thing all over again. And it's just like Tom Massey says in that cold open, they all have an AIPAC babysitter, and everyone knows because it's no secret. Miriam Adelson gave $12 million to Trump's campaign, which he owes them nothing for. Like, he's the president now; he can do whatever he wants, and if he doesn't want to repay her, that's no problem. But somehow we're apparently getting to a new war in the Middle East and a new war with Iran. So yeah, it's yeah, Jamie quotes Pat Buchanan. Capitol Hill is Israel occupied territory. Yeah, so much of that America First stuff. America First after Israel. So, yeah, speaking of that, so this is President Trump's truth tweet, or truth, as he likes to call it, Truth Social. Here we go. Today, I have ordered the U.S. military to launch decisive and powerful military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. They have waged an unrelenting campaign of piracy, violence, and terrorism against American and other, I wonder who that other might be, ships, aircraft, and drones. Joe Biden's response was pathetically weak, so the unrestrained Houthis just kept going. This is not actually true. Like, Biden carried out countless attacks on the Houthis. They don't give a rip. That's the crazy thing about them. It's been over a year since a U.S. flagged commercial ship safely sailed through the Suez Canal, the Red Sea, or the Gulf of Aden. The last American warship to go through the Red Sea 4 months ago was attacked by the Houthis over a dozen times, funded by Iran. The Houthis thugs have fired missiles at U.S. craft, targeting our troops and allies. These relentless assaults have cost the U.S. and world economy many billions of dollars, while at the same time putting innocent lives at risk. It's like George W. Bush all over again. The Houthi attack will not be tolerated. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we've achieved our objective. The Houthis have choked off shipping one of the most important waterways of the world. I mean, to Europe, most of our trade, what about the Panama Canal? Weren't we worried about the Panama Canal? The thing that really is important for us.
This is the United States playing world police.
Yep, it's the exact same thing. And this is all really escalation towards war with Iran. It's totally obvious that's where this is all going. Here's Mike Waltz. Oh, by the way, just saying, you sent me this link too. This is great. This is who we actually end up hitting. 24 people killed, 10 civilians. So yeah, I mean, and Scott Rose talked about this extensively. The Houthis have been fighting this war for like the last 10 plus years. Like they've been hit. They don't stop just because they've been hit. Like this is an ongoing escalation.
And keep in mind the context is, the Saudis, instituted this horrendously brutal war against Yemen. They've received billions of dollars in aid from the United States throughout the entire period. Trump, actually vetoed a measure that would have ended that support during his first administration. Yeah. Biden claimed that he would end their support of the continuous murder of people in Yemen. He did not. And now Trump's in office right now, and he's doubling down on that and making it clear that he's going after the Houthis because to send a message to Iran. So it's looking more and more likely that we're going to have a war with Iran, and that will be as disastrous, if not more disastrous, than our military escapades in Iraq or Libya, or Afghanistan. So this is what we're embarking on, and the attacks on Yemen. It's exactly the sort of thing that George W. Bush or Obama would have done. You see the people on Twitter who are just rah-rahing over this stuff. And those are the sort of people who, Trump could embark on every one of the same policies that George W. Bush did, and they would rah-rah over it mindlessly. So it's really, not surprising to see, but very much shameful. And, like we said earlier, that, when Trump does something good, we should be in his corner. But when he's going awry, when he's not going on his mandate, when he's doing the same sort of military industrial complex style policies in the Middle East, we have to call that out and make sure that that doesn't continue. But unfortunately, like Mike Waltz said, like Pete Hegseth said, that this is just the beginning, that they're going to do more brutal acts in Yemen, and that will only cause a lot more blowback against us, and people being more angry against us in the entire region, and the region being galvanized against us and making it much less likely to have peace.
Yeah. So much for that America First stuff. It's all about Ukraine. It's all about going after being tough on Iran, starting a new war on behalf of Israel. This is not what we voted for. And Heather says warmongering wasn't on my MAGA bingo card. You were supposed to actually do something about that. Yeah, Peter says peace through strength does require showing that strength. The problem is we don't have that strength, and everyone knows it. That's why the Houthis are striking our vessels. That's why Russia doesn't care what Trump begs him to do, because we've just spent the last 4 years blowing all of our military equipment to get chewed up in Ukraine, and everyone knows it.
And where's the peace? Where's the peace at? The world is, the Middle East is, in a horrible state. Look at what's going on in Syria right now, the total disaster there. That was caused in part because of U.S. intervention. In fact, you find some horrible thing that's going on in the Middle East or many other parts of the world, the vast majority of them have to have U.S. military intervention starting it or worsening the problem almost everywhere. So the answer is to pull back, rebuild ourselves so that we're no one will want to mess with us, because they know that we'll come after them if they do. But don't go out there playing world police. We're gonna protect these boats, most of which are Chinese. I believe China has the most cargo going through that area. So we're going to be playing world police to protect Chinese and Saudi investments. However many miles away. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And now we're bombing innocent people. They're going to be more pissed at us. They're going to be more likely to go to war with us. It's the same story we've seen over and over again. So there's no peace and there's no strength.
Yeah. Well, you want to show strength, what you could do, bring our troops out of the European bases they have all over Europe where we don't need them, and go kick the shit out of the drug cartels. Yeah, that'd be a good show of strength. How about that? How about we kick the shit out of the drug cartels on our own continent? But no, we're not doing that. No, never mind. We got more important things to do. Mark says, what would you guys plan on doing to Trump if he does something you don't like? Wait, ha, ha, ha. What do you think's going to happen, Mark, in 2 years? When Trump's base is like, hey, we voted for one thing. He gave us more of the same old crap. We wanted, massive government cuts. What did Trump do this week? He signed an extension for the Pelosi budget, the Biden budget, for 6 more months. We'll talk about that next. So what's going to happen when Trump breaks all of his core campaign promises, and instead of cutting the massive swamp, instead of reining in the out-of-control budget, instead of ending the wars, he perpetuates the wars, and we just get more of the same crap as we've had for the last 20-plus years? Voters stay home, and the Republican brand is damaged. And then what's going to happen? What happens if the Democrats take the House back, Mark? And for the next 2 years, there's going to be more impeachments. That's going to happen. So maybe Trump should honor his campaign promises and follow through on the things he ran on, the things we elected him to do. Won't be me that has to do it.
Yeah, if Trump doesn't deliver on his mandate, that's going to mean probably disastrous losses in the midterms. And then, the opportunity will be effectively squandered. So, the more Trump strays from his mandate, the more he does the same old policies in the Middle East and doesn't deliver in terms of raw numbers on the mass deportations, and doesn't stop the war in Ukraine, the longer it goes where these problems aren't solved or you're not seeing enough progress, that makes it much more likely for Republicans to lose in the midterm elections next year. And then we're back to square one, and it'll be much more likely for the Democrats to get in there, and then they can rescind all the executive orders and make it like the Trump presidency never happened in no time. So, but we're on the verge of catastrophe here, and I don't think all hope is lost, but it's definitely going the wrong direction.
Yeah, it's like Glenn Greenwald just posted the other day. He says Trump supporters were promised mass deportations, but you're not getting that. So they're feeding you isolated melodramatic cases of Israel opponents being deported to placate this unsatisfied desire and to keep Miriam Adelson happy. Yeah. We're about those mass deportations. But anyway, I was going to talk about this, and this is another huge topic too, this big budget deal. So you'll recall back in December when the Republicans once again voted to extend the Nancy Pelosi budget. They said, well, this is only going to be extended through March, and then in March we can pass our much more conservative budget. Well, now here we are, and the budget was set to expire again, and they extended the Pelosi budget for another 6 months, which means now all of the DOGE cuts get rolled back. All that spending they said they were cutting is now going to be spent again. All the things that they said were complete waste and fraud and abuse, we're funding them all again. And Patty also mentioned this also hurt our chances to win back everything else in Michigan too. Yeah, everything has consequences, and it's that's why this matters, and that's why people should be talking about and trying to stop this, which has already gone way out of control. So anyway, here's Thomas Massey. I'll play this clip because this is a great summary of just all the crazy things that just happened. So he makes this video. This is this was, I think, Tuesday it was. And everything that he says came true like 3 days later. So here's the clip. Here we go.
Congressman Massey here. I thought you'd like to know about the fake fight that's going on in the House of Representatives right now over this CR. They're trying to pitch it as a conservative CR versus liberal Democrats. And even the Democrats are going along in the House. But let me tell you why that's a fake fight. They plan to pass it with all Republicans here in the House. But after we leave town, the Democrats are going to vote for it in the Senate. That's right. They're going to need about 8 Democrat senators to vote for this thing over in the Senate. That means that this deal has already been cut, that Mike Johnson has cut a deal with the Senate Democrats, Senate leadership, and even Hakeem Jeffries. He's in on this so that they can pitch their fake fight here in the House. Now, why am I so certain this is going to pass in the Senate when it gets over there with 8 Democrats or however many Democrats they need? Well, Mike Johnson is sending us home a day early. We're going to vote on this thing and skip town. If you thought there was really a threat of them not passing it in the Senate, why would you leave town? The other thing that's going on is the Democrats have a retreat, an off-site retreat, where they're going to get together and party and have, guest speakers and stuff. And that starts tomorrow and runs through Thursday and Friday. Now, you think they're not going to let this thing pass? What would happen if, let's say, the Freedom Caucus decided to take the conservative stance on this CR and oppose it? Well, they would be about 30 or 40 votes short here in the House, the Republicans would. But Hakeem Jeffries wouldn't be able to pretend, along with Mike Johnson, in this fake fight, that this is a conservative versus liberal battle in the House. And he would just hand over at least 40 Democrats. And once you get to 40 Democrats, it'd probably be a whole lot more Democrats. So that's what's going on. It's all a fake fight. You're going to find this out when it goes over to the Senate and you have Democrats in the Senate voting for it.
So that's exactly what happened. And again,
remove this man.
Yeah.
Primary him out.
Yeah, that's what Trump's response to all this was. And so one of the things that Massey didn't mention is the other thing that was in the budget deal was, because this the Republican talking point on this was, what we've actually figured out is what the House Freedom Caucus says. We'll support this budget this time. We never did before, but this time we'll support it because it's actually a ceiling, not a floor on the spending. and Trump will just cut all the stuff all by himself, which first of all is not actually true. That's just not true. And that's what the courts are all now saying too, is the money is appropriated by Congress. The president can't just not spend it. And also, not unless there's a rescission, which they haven't sent him any rescission. There's no, the only rescission that's even been proposed in Congress was this past week when Rand Paul put in an amendment to rescind the foreign aid that Doge rolled back. And guess what? They voted against it. They voted it down. It was like 26 to 27 Republicans, plus all the Democrats voted no. So they actually voted to keep all of the foreign aid flowing, including 26 Senate Republicans. So there's that. But if they actually thought that Trump could was just not going to spend the money, why would they put in a $4 trillion debt limit increase in the deal too? Why is Trump not always constantly talking about he wants the debt limit suspended, raised, done away with, et cetera, et cetera. And and then the other talking point people have is they say, oh, well, Chuck Schumer relented. He gave up and he voted he got the Democrats to vote for the spending bill. Yeah, because that was the better option for the Democrats. That was the better option. Because the alternative was either negotiating for a lower budget, which they could have done if Republicans had been holding out, or the government shutting down, which would have been a good thing and with a lot less spending. But no, they didn't do any of that stuff. So, Peter says Doge does not get rolled back. They will be put back to Congress as deferment or impoundment before September. Courts are looking to see if Trump violates the Impoundment Act. Yeah, the Doge cuts are only going to be temporary. Congress has to make them permanent, and they're not doing it. So anyway, Massey goes on. He's got another great point he makes next. I'm gonna play this a little bit further.
Now, here's the other thing a lot of people aren't telling you about this bill. In the FRA, stands for Fiscal Responsibility Act. I'm not saying it was that responsible, but in the FRA that passed a couple years ago under Kevin McCarthy, the deal that was cut between myself and others on the Rules Committee was that if you will guarantee a 1% cut in spending on any CR that goes past April 30th and put that into law, use the sequester language and put that into law, then we would raise the debt limit or suspend the debt limit for a period of time. I voted for this because a 1% cut seemed like a wonderful thing if they would go and do a CR for a full year, which seemed like almost a certainty at some point in the next 2 years. Well, here we are under Mike Johnson, and we've got the 1 year CR that they're going to do. It's actually a 6-month CR because we're already 6 months into this, and it's going to go past April 30th. It should trigger the sequester. But guess what? Mike Johnson's folks and lawyers have said, we're just going to ignore that. We're going to treat this continuing resolution as 12 appropriations bills or an omnibus for the purposes of this sequester, because it goes all the way to September 30th. In other words, they're saying this really isn't a CR for the purposes of that deal we cut 2 years ago. We're going to call this basically an omnibus in CR clothing, so we don't have to follow the law, the agreement that we did before. Now, that's pretty disingenuous if you ask me. It's even more disingenuous to try to say that, 2 years ago, Massey was fiscally irresponsible because he voted to raise the debt limit. No, we got a deal there, and then Mike Johnson has broken the deal because he's not being conservative. I mean, this was obvious as that Capitol dome back there behind me.
So yeah. So that's it, folks. I mean, they've been saying we really only get 2 years that we sure the Republicans can do great things with Trump, because then who knows what's going to happen in 2026. Well, we just extended the Pelosi budget for another 6 months, which not only that, but also the 1% spending cuts are done away with. So
and in 6 months there'll be some other novel excuse for why we need to keep it going longer. And they'll always have something. There'll be some.
We haven't had time to talk it out.
Yeah, it'll be some new BS, and obviously that Trump and the Republicans want to keep it going, because if it didn't stay going, then there would probably be some short-term economic fallout, and that would be bad for them. They don't want to get the bad headlines. They don't want to lose momentum, blah, blah, blah. But there always being an excuse to not stop the spending. and eventually, the entire country will be completely bankrupt, and there'll be mass calamity and hyperinflation and whatever when the shoe finally drops. But everyone's just hoping that it won't be on their watch, that they'll be able to kick it off to some schmuck down the line, and that those will be the people who will pay the political consequences for the debt. So don't expect the Republicans to ever take a hard line on any of this. It'll always be a new round of excuses keeping this thing going until it collapses.
Yeah, I was trying to find. Rand Paul just had a tweet where he said something to that effect, that it's always we'll do it next time. We'll cut the spinning next time. But I did actually find a post from Kelly Paul, his wife, with a text from Rand saying, as they called the roll on my amendment to cut foreign aid, not a peep was heard on the Republican side. Usually each senator responds with a forceful aye or no. This time you could drop a pin. The Republicans were responding with hand signals only. So deep was their embarrassment to vote against cutting foreign aid. So, and they named all the Republican senators the 26 who voted for it. And of course, neither's from Michigan, but hey, apparently we're going to have Mike Rogers running for the Michigan U.S. Senate seat yet again. So he can be part of that group of the club of 26 voting yes on foreign aid. And you can just tell from the way Mike Rogers talks that he hasn't changed. That's his new thing, is he's posting all kinds of stuff pretending to be a Trumpster, as if he wasn't the one campaigning against Trump just a couple of years ago. And
MAGA Mike Rogers in the house.
Yeah, MAGA Mike, right. Yeah, there was I made a comment about this statement Mike Rogers made on X. I can probably find it pretty easily here. But where was it? Oh, well, anyway. Yeah, they never make any genuine understanding of what America First actually means. It's more like see, I wish I could find this post right now, because hold on, let me try something. Oh, screw it, never mind. All right, I lost my place, guys. Sorry about that. I need an audio clip for when I leave dead air like that. But anyway, so yeah, the budget's been extended. Nothing's been reformed. All the Doge cuts are illusory, and Trump is actually going after trying to recruit a primary challenger for Thomas Massie for being the one Republican that voted against this extension of the Nancy Pelosi era budget. For his part, Thomas Massie, someone just mentioned Justin Amash. I wish Justin had not gone wrong when he voted for Trump's impeachment, because that was a bad thing, and Justin Amash should not have supported that. But as for Thomas Massie, he took it in stride. He said, yeah, right now Trump is raging at me in Canada, and the difference is Canada will cave. And that's the thing, Trump is, I made this comment on X, Trump is iron, he is, he's strong and tough, but he's also brittle. Thomas Massie's the true steel. He's the one that will not break. And, Trump might raise a bunch of money to attack him the way he knocked out Bob Good, another serious fiscal conservative who he replaced with a toady. But Massie, I think he instantaneously raised like $300,000 for his reelection campaign. The last time Trump ran a primary challenger against him, he didn't crack 20%. So, good. And the response on X was absolutely explosive in support for Thomas Massie. Everybody came out and said, Trump, read the room. You're doing the wrong thing. Stop attacking the conservatives. Stop attacking Thomas Massie. And this is the broader picture, folks. We don't get better policies by making excuses for when Trump does the wrong thing. The better approach is to try to call this behavior out, to minimize it now, because it's not going to get better if it doesn't happen. Trump needs to see some negative reinforcement.
Yeah, and Trump has shown that, he does check social media. He does, look at, where people's public opinion are before, making his policies, or, change. He can change his statements based on that. So that's why people should be vocally opposing the really bad stuff, getting out there on X and getting on Truth Social in his replies and being like, this is the wrong move, because Trump will see that and he may change course. I also think that with Massey, the way that they're going to be trying to put up a primary challenger against him, I think time's going to prove Massey to be right, just like it did when he voted against the CARES Act in 2020, and Trump blasted him over that. Now, however many years later, we look back at the CARES Act as a total nightmare that fed into the horrible inflation that we're dealing with, that had all kinds of waste in it and all kinds of woke crap and insane crap being funded. But they had to fund it at the time. We had to fund it, because the whole world's going to collapse if we don't. Thomas Massey was the only person who said no, and he was the one who tried to avert that disaster. Everyone else went along with it. So I think that, by standing in the minority, Thomas Massey is going to be vindicated probably sooner rather than later. And it's going to be very, very difficult for any sort of momentum to build behind a primary challenger against him next year, despite the handful of, people who on social media, the personalities who depend on supporting Trump no matter what he does, 100% of the time, cheerleading for him. They'll be trying to get rid of Massey, but not too many other people will.
Yeah. Jamie says, Justin Amash said it wasn't personal when he voted to impeach Trump. He would have voted to impeach any president because they all do unconstitutional things. Well, that's bad reasoning on Justin's part, in my opinion, because the impeachment that he voted for was not for unconstitutional things. It was specifically for an entirely proper phone call to, as it happens, the president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, about Joe Biden's corrupt business dealings with Burisma, and the firing of a prosecutor at Joe Biden's order. So that was a wholly proper act that the president did, and he was impeached on false pretenses, and Justin paid a price for his bad judgment, in my opinion. John C. King says, those that campaign for Slotkin by attacking Mike Rogers can state, I did that every time Slotkin appears on television. The media wants you to be the next great dumb home for president. John, if you're trying to shame me into not supporting Alyssa Slotkin, first off, that is not campaigning for her by attacking Mike for telling the truth about who Mike Rogers is. That's not campaigning for Slotkin. I mean, as I see it, Mike Rogers was the one that campaigned for Slotkin. Great job, NRSC. You're the one that put the thumb on the scale in that primary. And secondly, I'm not sorry. I don't mind that we have a Democrat to campaign against rather than this is the problem, folks. This is the biggest lie in politics. This lesser of two. I'm compelled to support the lesser of two evils. The damage that lie does. First off, you have no evidence that Mike Rogers wouldn't be worse than Slotkin. On all of these things we've just talked about, Rogers would have been right there with them. On reinstating the foreign aid, on voting for the Nancy Pelosi budgets, that'd been Slotkin's vote, or that'd been Mike Rogers' vote too. All those senators, all the U.S. senators except for Senator Rand Paul, voted for that very same thing. The problem is when Republicans do it, here's what happens. Number one, it demoralizes our base. That's the reason why so few people are even interested in politics, because they figure it's just a corrupt system to begin with. But at least when Barack Obama and Joe Biden are destroying the Middle East and getting us into stupid wars and causing mass inflation, it gives us something to oppose, to run against. When it's our side that does it, the Democrats win. And if we don't clean our house, then we don't have any business telling the other side what their problems are.
And then, our side gets co-opted into supporting all kinds of bad stuff, like, dropping bombs on Yemen or, destroying free speech on campus. So, when our side does the bad stuff, you see a lot of Republicans going along with it just mindlessly, and then we lose credibility, and then we don't have principles, and then we don't support the Constitution, and then people who otherwise would support Republicans who aren't mindless toadies, they're driven away, and our party withers and dies. So the idea that we need to put up terrible Republicans is because they'd be marginally better than Democrats. I resist that completely. And I'm planning on going even harder against Mike Rogers in 2026 and 2024. There should be a better field, though, in 2026 because, there is a perceived amount of momentum behind the Republican Party here now that wasn't there after the 2022 election going into 2024. So I do think it'll be a stronger field, and Mike just won't cakewalk into the nomination this time. So I am convinced that it'll be more difficult for him. I saw a poll that showed Tudor Dixon having much higher favorables among Republicans and MAGA people over Mike Rogers. And Tudor Dixon isn't the ideal candidate in my eyes, but she's about 5 million times better than Mike Rogers for the position. I'd be happy to support really anyone other than Mike. But
why in the world would we pick a candidate that just lost to Alyssa Slotkin in a year that Trump won Michigan? Why in the world would you pick someone like that? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Yeah, Trump couldn't drag her over the line with Trump on the ballot. He hitched his wagons to one of the most popular and charismatic political figures imaginable, and still couldn't win. So how the hell is he going to win without Trump on the ballot when people are going to have to examine him and his record more and who he actually is? How the hell is he going to win without Trump there? There's no answer to that question. He would lose by a much larger margin to any Democrat, and we would just look like a bunch of idiots again.
Yeah. Peter asks, there's the problem with MIGOP cannot find half decent candidates, or the problem is that the Republican Party can't find half decent candidates. I mean, why not? Shoot. Why am I blanking on the guy's name? The senator that sits right next to Jim Runstead all the time.
Lindsey?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Why not Jonathan Lindsay? I mean, if the Democrats are going to run a state senator, Mallory McMorrow, why not run Jonathan Lindsay?
Yeah, he'd be a terrific candidate. He would be, he has a spectacular record. He presents well. He's articulate. You can't question his MAGA credentials, but, comes off as his own man. He checks a lot of boxes and would be an ideal candidate to run for U.S. Senate, and hope he does.
Yeah. There could be others too. There could be others out there. You never know. John wants you to define what you mean by rhino, Shane.
Well, Mike Rogers, he checks every box for a rhino. Supported illegal spying, supported all the illegal wars. He, was a lobbyist. He was the head of the House Intelligence Committee, and then as soon as he left office, he went to work for the different agencies that he should have been overseeing, cashing in on those connections to the tune of millions of dollars. So he's the perfect example of the revolving door of politics, where the politicians jump from government job into lobbying position, back and forth, just raking it in. He's the worst example of that. He supported the January 6th probe, the unconstitutional probe into January 6th. He opposed Trump up until 2023, when someone got in his ear and said, hey, you can glom on to Trump and maybe get to the U.S. Senate. So he was a never Trumper for 8 years or so, bashing Trump in the media, saying, he's not, refusing to say whether he'd support Trump for president in 2024. He said that Trump's time is over. He's damaged goods, blah, blah, blah. Contemplated running against Trump for president. So he checked, and there's a lot worse stuff too that I'm just not remembering. So, the term rhino gets overused, but there are people who are textbook definitions of rhinos, and I would say that Mike Rogers is the worst of them all.
There are tons of Republicans that don't actually share our values, folks. People want to be in politics because they want to be in power, and they want to be showered with money, and they want to be able to be invited to every elite gathering. And there are tons of people like that. And you know who they are. You know who Justice John Roberts is. You know who Lindsey Graham is. You know who Mitch McConnell is. Don't pretend you don't know what a rhino is. You know exactly who a rhino is. A rhino is the people that will be supporting people like Mitch McConnell who want to be Mitch McConnell. And that's what Mike Rogers is. And there's many more like him. And
a rhino, however, is not someone who voted for a different candidate than you at state convention for an understandable reason.
Yeah, exactly.
That's not a rhino.
No. But let's not pretend there's not a real problem with rhinos out there. Anyway, what else has Trump done this week? Oh, there's more. There's more, is there? Oh, yeah. There's his, he's got a new tax plan. Let's have no tax for those making under $150,000 a year, which I guess sounds good unless you're making $151,000 a year. Then you're in that dreaded rich person's bracket, and the rich don't pay their fair share, do they, ladies and gentlemen? No, they certainly don't. So apparently it's, next it's going to be rob the rich and give to the poor. Class war, everybody. Trump's new
But
tax
this
plan.
sounds kind of like just something that he's throwing out there to
Yeah.
get people to
Yeah, of
rah
course.
rah, and then it won't be followed up upon. It's how
Right.
I don't think he could unilaterally declare that to be the case if he wanted to. So I think it's just something he's throwing out there as red meat to get people rah rahing for him.
Yeah. Oh, he also met with Gretchen Whitmer this week, as if he's got no one better to meet with apparently. So he's meeting with all the great ones, Gretchen Whitmer, and whoever Volodymyr Zelensky assigned. I guess Trump didn't meet personally with Zelensky this week, but yeah, it's been a hell of a week, folks. And boy, it's just sad to see. We had so much great things going on for the first several weeks of Trump's term of office, and maybe we can get back to that someday. But the thing that scares me is this budget deal is now done. Like, that's 6 months gone. This business of now we're funding Ukraine again is hard to undo a second time. So this is not good. This is not a positive direction. We've seen 2 important appointees get locked out. Also, where's Elbridge Colby in the Department of Defense? He still hasn't gotten confirmed. Maybe the Israel lobby blocked him too. We haven't seen. We lost Peter Weldon at the CDC. So this is not good, folks. And Trump should be putting his energy towards getting his people confirmed. The people who should be going after in the U.S. Senate are the ones that are blocking his appointees. The ones that are not doing anything about these rogue judges. Like, where's the bill on that? He should be wrangling Congress. Instead, he's in bed with the congressional leadership, passing these stupid budget deals. This is bad. This is not good. This is bad. Sharon says we're always better off getting another Republican in the Senate, no matter who they are. That's the attitude of the politicians telling you what you must settle for. You want a Republican majority. Yeah, and when we have a Republican majority that does the exact same thing the Democrats are doing, then what's the point? I don't care who the people are in office. I care about the policies. I want the budget to not be out of control. I want our tax dollars to stop going to fund these insane military adventures that lead to tons of innocent people being butchered. And it doesn't matter who the president is or who the congressman is. All that matters is, are we doing anything about those policies? And if the answer is, I don't care, I just want to elect Team R and let them, and if they do the exact same thing and don't repeal the red flag laws and don't protect innocent life and don't secure the border and don't reduce the budget, then there's no point in this, folks. You're just watching a drama and rooting for the home team. So that's why this stuff's got to be called out. And yeah. Peter says we need to be active in primaries and before primaries, finding good candidates and getting them elected. I completely agree. I hope we find some good candidates. We got a great candidate for state house in Washtenaw County. He didn't quite make it last year, but he's working a lot harder from the get-go. So we'll see if he makes it in 2 years. Hopefully we find someone to run for that 31st state house seat as well. So we'll see. But yeah, quality candidates really do matter. And hopefully the state party is doing the work to find outstanding candidates for the statewide seats too. And there's a process. There's a primary. There's a convention. So let's hope we find good candidates for these roles.
But the problem with, a guy like Mike Rogers is so well connected in Washington, D.C. from serving the swamp for decades that, they want to create the appearance of invincibility, and they'll throw a bunch of money behind Rogers and try to twist arms behind the scenes against other candidates who might be more popular and more viable, but the big money hasn't anointed them. So there's a lot of machinations that go on behind the scenes that prevent good candidates from even having a chance to get the nomination. This is the sort of corruption that people hate within the system and pisses them off and makes Republicans look bad. And all those dark forces are working overtime to support Rogers, including, Chris LaCivita, the guy, the thug who threatened Thomas Massey on Twitter. Trump, he's glommed onto the Trump team, former Mitch McConnell henchman, RNC goon. This guy, he's going to be apparently working for Mike Rogers in the state of Michigan. So there's going to be a lot of powerful people working to push Mike Rogers, and we have to defeat those people and make sure we don't get another catastrophe running for U.S. Senate, another loss in the making because the big money is comfortable with Rogers.
Yep. Jay Mashad says, are there any good current U.S. House members who'd be good Senate candidates in 2026? You mean in Michigan? I don't know. I'm disappointed in Tom Barrett on that budget deal. He voted with all the others. So, and besides that, he just lost the race for U.S. Senate against Alyssa Slotkin 2 years earlier. So,
Or House. He lost the House seat to her.
A House seat. That's right.
Yeah.
So, there you go. John C. King says, Rogers, pro-life, against transing, less spending. Citation needed. How do you know? Because he said these things. He has no pro-life record in the U.S. House when he was there. He has no record of being against transing. These are all things it's easy to say, I'm against out of control spending. Yeah. Did he vote against any Republican budgets when they were raising the budget when he was in Congress?
Yeah, he was more than happy with, exploding the deficits and the debt to go to a million wars and create the horrifying Big Brother spying apparatus of the NSA. So he was a big government Republican when he served. And I have there's no evidence showing that he wouldn't be a big government Republican, big spending Republican now, that he's changed anything. He has shown no change in any of his positions, no contrition over anything that he's done. He's completely arrogant. He's the exact same guy he's always been. And he just expects to be anointed because the big money is behind him. So
I don't know about you guys. I care about the January 6th victims. I know one of them personally, known him well. And Rogers would think nothing of locking the guy up and throwing away the key. That makes him an enemy of me. That's all there is to it. Peter says, we'll get rid of open primaries in Michigan or go to convention to keep the runners out. Well, going to convention has its own set of problems too, unfortunately. But that's a whole other story. And the answer is probably not. I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So I guess that's it for tonight, folks. We'll try to get back into the swing of things on the state capitol next week and see if there's any good news to report there. I doubt it, but there's been a lot of gridlock because of the party splits. So, take the small wins, I guess. I guess that's going to do it for us for tonight. More from us soon. And until then, thanks for joining us tonight. Oh, on Rumble, Dennis Marburger, sorry, I forgot to read your comments, says so much for America first. Yep. Says the series of actions by Trump are the opposite of what we need and what we were told we were getting. Cue up the who. Says track record in Congress was awful. His grade on the Freedom Index was approximately 50%. That's a failing grade. He's a serial oath violator. Barry says great information tonight. Thank you, Barry. And look, Mark, I know you are not happy when we criticize Trump, but look, I sincerely want Trump to succeed. Okay. Like that's the reason why we're calling this stuff out, because the behavior needs to change. And Trump needs to remember what his campaign promises were and stick to those. And for the love of God, do not get sucked into Ukraine. And let's hope that does change. And we'll just see how things develop. But at the moment, things are not looking great. So Patty says, great stream. Thank you, Patty. We appreciate you. And everybody else for tuning in. Thanks as always. Until next time. Oh, Shane, you have any events you want to plug, anything like that? You got anything coming up?
No, we just had January 6th Patriots Vindicated in Gaylord, brand new party event yesterday.
Cool.
Had over 50 people there. It was very well received. So if you are interested in having a similar event where you'll have the people who were given the pardon for January 6th participation, or the people who were falsely ensnared in the Whitmer kidnapping hoax, having an event where they speak, they talk about the corruption within the government. It's, the people there were kind of spellbound by hearing from these people. And it really helps, to kind of normalize that these frontline patriots having their voices heard, that they're heroes, that we're standing by them, because they've been oppressed. We're not throwing them under the bus, and changing hearts and minds about the nature of the government in doing so. So if you're interested in having a similar event in your area, when your club or your Republican Party chapter or anything like that, just come find me. Go to gnppac.com and we'll get something going in the very near future.
Cool. Jamie Ortiz says Thomas Massey is Mitch McConnell's replacement. I wish. Also says Ron Paul event in Lake Jackson next Saturday. Boy, I might want to go to that.
I went to that one last year. That's where I met Jamie. I went to that one last year and it was incredible. Wish I could go this year. Just don't have the funds for it. Have fun, Jamie.
Yeah, I went to Lake Jackson once and it was amazing. It was a very long time ago. I should go back. Stephanie Jacobson, that was a great event. People, did you hear these stories? Our event went almost an hour over and no one even left the room during the speakers. That's amazing. Dennis says, good show, friends. Dennis, that reminds me, since you're there, we didn't say anything about Syria. There's another disaster going on there, but strange. Of all the places where Trump might want to intervene on behalf of the Christians being slaughtered in Syria, it really is horrible. It really is atrocious. And if there's any excuse to break the non-interventionist foreign policy, it might be to do something about that Al-Qaeda freaking terrorist who now wears a suit and tie and carries out the organized murder of Christians in Syria. But for some reason, the administration doesn't seem to pay attention to that.
Yeah, where's the intervention to help the Armenian Christians who are getting pummeled by the Azerbaijani government? Well, the United States is supporting the genocide, at least tacitly. So, what a horrible foreign policy our country has.
Yeah. On that note, hopefully a better week next time. Until then, thank you guys for tuning in. Thanks for all you guys do for liberty. Until then, peace.